So Max Anderson was another request we got on Twitter, and Max Anderson's off to, I mean, he's leading the Eastern League in RBIs. He's been an extra base hit machine. And the running joke, not necessarily a joke, but it was just funny because for a while, all the home runs he was hitting seemed like they were opposite field, blast to right. But now he's been hitting more to left. And this is a guy who, admittedly, Chris, I know we were talking about, like, where is he going to be long-term position-wise? But I think he's trying to force the issue at second base a little bit more, because the first time I saw him live this year, he had a rough 2 games live. And I was like, oh, well, there goes again the glove. We're not sure about. But it's like he's a completely different player, and this is why you don't write somebody off after one series.
Yeah, and we wrote a little bit about that when we previewed all our prospects earlier in the season. It was he just had kind of a pedestrian first full year in pro ball last year. There was just nothing that stood out, right? He hit like 260, which is fine in high A, but for a college guy, it's nothing special. He had 11 homers, again, nothing special. He's not a big walk guy. Usually walks about 6%. He doesn't strike out much either, which is nice. But, there was nothing production-wise that said, hey, this guy is a high-priority prospect. He's going to break out. And again, we touched on that, the defense wasn't terribly good. But so far this year, I mean, he's hitting hitting the cover off the ball. He's already got 5 home runs, I think.
And this one is
hitting 326. Again, he's still not walking, but he's also still not striking out. And if you're going to hit for average and power, then suddenly you become very interesting. And that right there, like you said, he's pulling the ball for power now. Not all the time, but a lot of his home runs are still going to right center. But if you pull the ball enough and you could turn on velocity, then you become very, very interesting. And yeah, he's definitely, I think, moving up a lot of prospect boards right now. I'm still not quite sure what the ceiling is there, but as you said, you don't write guys off after one season, and yeah, he's definitely making some progress.
I mean, this is a guy who did lead the Big Ten in hitting at the University of Nebraska, and Nebraska, you would probably know this better than I would, as far as here's an example of him going opposite field all the time here, but this is back when he was in Lakeland. But the Big Ten, as far as developing, Nebraska's not exactly a powerhouse either, but if you can hit no matter what. And this is a guy who continues to, I think, exceed people's expectations. But it's also, you look at the crowded infield situation right now, where the question becomes, I know we're going to get this question. Is this guy forced issue to, how is he going to make his way through the system? You have Hyu Lee, you have Jace Young right now, you have Cole Keefe, who's your long-term second baseman in theory right now. But where does he play first base? Does he play second? Where else could Max Anderson potentially play?
Yeah, I mean, he did play a little first base in college and in the Cape Cod League. He played some third base early in his career. I don't know if he quite has the arm strength to do that, but it would be something I would consider.
Here on a non-roster,
it's helpful now, oddly enough, that he's a right-handed bat, right?
Yeah.
And there's one just a monster home run. We talked about it before, that every now and then he would hit this just gigantic shots to center field. He's got that kind of power where it just surprises you, where the ball just keeps going. Jace Young is kind of similar. He would occasionally just kind of put, that doesn't look like a crazy swing, and then the ball just goes 430 feet to center field. It's like, wow. But yeah, defensively, he's gotten better at second base. Like you said, there's kind of a logjam there. He could fill in at first and try him at third a little bit. We'll see what happens there. The Tigers don't seem, they don't seem terribly worried about, we've got too many prospects at this one position. What are we going to do? They just kind of they're going to give playing time to the guys who they think deserve it. And if somebody takes the job, then they have the job. So if Young doesn't start hitting for power at the big league level, then maybe Hyu Lee eventually gets a shot, and if he doesn't work out, then maybe Max Anderson gets a shot. And they have no problem keeping high-ranked prospects in Toledo if they're performing and giving them plenty of room. So I don't know. For now, I don't think they're in any rush to promote Anderson or anything like that. But if he keeps hitting like this, then it's hard to see him not moving up to Toledo later in the year. The guy we've compared him to, kind of just in terms of his hitting profile, is Justice Bigby. And a couple years ago, Justice Bigby spent the first, 5-6 weeks in West Michigan, and then came up to Erie and hit 360 with power, and they kept him there until like the final 2 weeks of the season. So, I don't think there were any huge rush to move Max Anderson, but he is a Scott Harris draft pick, Mark Connor draft pick. So maybe they feel a little bit better about their own guys, and they'll see him move up.
That's a good point too. Here's an example too that he's one of their guys, and they might be taking out. And this is off of Fuentes, who was one of the few players that got a hit to Fuentes. I wanted to point that out because that guy was dealing for Atlanta. That was one of their best pitching prospects we've seen so far.
What is his name? Didier Fuentes. I think.
Yeah, Didier from Colombia. I believe he's from Colombia.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, to your point. So I think Nebraska, I think, had a little bit more storied baseball program when they were in the Big 8 or Big 10 or Big 12, whatever.
The Big 12. Yeah, at one point, the Big 12. Yeah.
But Max Anderson, his junior year in college, hit .414 with 21 homers, over 57 games. So that, numbers like that you would think would go in the first round, but he was generally considered kind of a second, third rounder because it's an odd hitting profile, so opposite field heavy, and because the defense was a question mark. So, he's kind of working on it all right now, and it's nice to see some improvements.
One thing I do like about the Tigers' approach at the draft is you just mentioned they're not really worried about the position, the position side of things, and I think before. See, this is before this is last year. This is deep center field.
I know, and that didn't he reached out and that pitch was away from him a little bit. And he 420 feet. There's a lot of power in there, and he's making good contact. So, as our buddy Yoop likes to say, if you can hit, they'll find a place for you to play. Yeah,
and that's exactly it. And this is where the Tigers are kind of thriving in the sense of, we talked about the bullpen arms earlier, about guys that is just it's not necessarily, it's about not velocity, but the ability just to play. And in this case with Max Anderson, our midseason evaluations coming up here shortly, and Anderson might be rising up our prospect list because right now you look at Kevin McGonigal is out injured, and this is a guy I think that because he's performing at AA, that's always an indicator of not necessarily always an indicator, but it's a pretty good indicator of things to come to a certain degree.
Yeah, generally speaking, and historically speaking, that if you can hit in AA, you got a good chance to make it to the big leagues. Now there are always exceptions, and we've seen a handful of guys who kind of, once they take that next step, they kind of falter. And part of that, I think, is that you don't necessarily see opponents game planning or targeting a hitter's weaknesses until you get to AAA, right? There are a lot of people are just out there kind of, doing their own thing, they're working on their craft rather than necessarily trying to win at all costs. Whereas in AAA, a lot of these guys are trying to get to the big leagues or get back to the big leagues, and they want to show those clubs that they can execute game plans and things like that. So that's the final step, obviously. Well, not the final step. It's the second to last step. The final step is getting to the big leagues. But yeah, there's nothing. You don't want to feel bad about a guy going to AA and performing this well. It's a 168 WRC plus right now. It's the second best in the system behind only Trey Cruz, who has been in AA for
3 years,
I don't know, a full
4 years,
full presidential cycle. So.
Yeah, at some point too, and that's not Cruz's fault, but we've done a couple. We had Ashley interview him recently, and we've done a couple articles on Trey. It's not, again, that's more of an organizational thing versus his own fault. Honestly, there's
nothing you can do. All you can do is go out there and perform, and he has.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I mean, the Tigers are doing some experimentation in Toledo to the likes of, you can only do so much with that. But I will say this before we get out of here, because sometimes we see this when Trey Cruz clips come up. Well, he's 26. That's not his fault. It's not his fault why he's there. And so, but he's recovered from Tommy John like it never happened, and that's impressive. But as far as getting back to Max Anderson is concerned, one thing that you mentioned about preparing for guys in Toledo, and this is something that we're noticing with Jace Young right now in the major leagues, to me, like Colt Keith, there was a slight adjustment before in AAA before he started hitting the ball in Toledo. That is the same. AAA, the jump to AA to AAA is becoming wider, I think. It used to be very comparable, but I don't think that's the case anymore. And it's because maybe there's more data available, Chris. I mean, I don't know. It just seems like there's that difference. People used to skip AA to go right. The Tigers had a couple guys that would skip AAA and go to the majors, but I don't think that's gonna be the case anymore.
Yeah, probably not. It's part of it is getting rid of short season ball has led to kind of a flattening of the talent from the bottom up, if that makes sense. Like there are guys that organizations still like, and they have to either hold them back in rookie ball or force them up to full season ball. And when that happens, somebody has to get forced up, and so there is a little bit more of an accelerated timetable now. And I do think that has bumped up the difficulty level a little bit more, and maybe teams are keeping fewer kind of organizational types than they used to. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know exactly what it is. Maybe the Tigers, their AAA philosophy seems to have been collect as many sort of 4A guys who have time in AAA and time in the majors as possible, and so just in case of an emergency, you have somebody you can call up who's been in the big leagues before, and so that the result of that is that a lot of guys are stuck back in AA. So I don't know what you have to do to crack that Toledo lineup these days, but I imagine it'll be quite different by the end of the year.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, I think Tiger fans want to have the ability to see these guys at I think there's been an impatience factor into it a little bit because people are just like going, well, where's that guy that's going to come up it doesn't have to spend any time in the minors, and I just don't see the Tigers doing that at this point. Again, it has to be overwhelming evidence, but it just seems like there's a philosophy in place that is going to stick no matter what.
Yeah, and just I guess use Jackson Jobe as an example of a guy. The best pitchers on the planet are in the big leagues. They get there pretty quickly. Jobe took a few years, but they bumped him. He basically came from AA to the majors. He made 2 starts at AAA, and then they brought him up. And that's because when you have arms and stuff like that, they just send you to the majors, and you figure it out there. So the jump in talent level from AAA to the majors is pretty big now because you're, a lefty down in AAA might see a handful of guys who are throwing 95 plus all year, and then you get to the majors and it's all that, or it's those like sidearmers who are throwing 75-mile-an-hour frisbees that move 6 feet. So it's a big leap in talent, and not many hitters come straight up from the minors and dominate. It just for any team, the Juan Sotos of the world are few and far between. Or
definitely
as well.
Yeah, even the Aaron Judge. I mean, Aaron Judge is becoming like an anomaly that we can.
Yeah, and he struggled his first time up. He was terrible when he came up for the minors the first time. So it's very few guys come up and do it right away.
Right, definitely. And right now we're witnessing the crop of players, and I think that's going to be in a video. Green, Torkelson, and Dingler, who we saw in Erie. So I think that's going to be our next. Actually, that just sprung an idea for our next video. So. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks so much for listening. Please subscribe, comment, all that jazz. There's our for our Patreon folks. You get this a week before anybody else does, or sometimes just on Patreon. We got some stuff from Jerry there, our wizard. We have some draft stuff coming up as well, with the draft coming up in July, and it's already beginning of May already. And so there's plenty of draft content coming your way here at TigersMLReport.com. We'll talk to you later.